So then we know what an HTTP request is now and why we'd use it to get some external data via some kind of API endpoint. So now let's see how to actually make a request from our JavaScript code. So the first thing we need to do is make a request object. So I'll create a constant and I'm going to call this request. And the way we create a request object is by saying new and then XML HTTP request. So this creates us a request object. Now this XML part represents an older data format we used to work with much before JSON arrived on the scene, but this request object can work with any kind of data now, XML, JSON, plain text, etc. So now we have this request object, and this is the thing that is going to be used to actually send a request from the browser. This thing is built into the JavaScript language. So now we have this request object, we can actually use it to send a request to get some data. So how do we do that? First of all, we take the request variable we just created, and now this comes loaded with different properties and methods we can use. The first method we need to use is the open method. Now this open method takes two arguments. The first argument is a string and it's the type of request we want to make. Now remember, when we get some data, we make a get request. Now there are other types of requests that we can make, like post to send data or put to update, etc. There's loads of different types, but we want to get some data, and for that we make a get request. So that is the first argument right there, the type of request we're making. Now the second argument is where we want to make the request to. What is the endpoint we want to get data from? So if we go to the JSON placeholder and scroll down a little bit, the endpoint we want is right here. This is the data we want. Now copy all this except for the one. The one at the end gets us a single to do, but we want all of the to-dos, and this URL right here will do that without the one. It will get us a list of to-dos. So copy that and head back to the code, and we need this inside a string again, so paste that inside there now. So now we're telling our request what the type of request is and where to get that data from, where to send the request to. But at the minute, the request isn't actually being made. This is just kind of setting up the request. So to actually send the request, we need to say request.send, and that sends the request. So if I save this now and head to the browser, I'm going to go to the network panel over here, and then I'm going to just refresh, and we can see now, if we go over here, we can see this request made here. So if we click on that request, we can see it's a request method of get. This is the endpoint, and the response over here is all of this data. But at the minute, we don't know in our code when this is complete. We don't know how to access that data. So how do we do all that? Well, in our code, we can track the progress of a request using an event listener and a specific event called ready state change. So we attach this to the request object itself. So we can say request.addEventListener, and the event is called ready state change, all one word, all lowercase. So that's the event, and this fires every time there's a state change in the request. Now a state change just means that the request is going through these different phases of the request, and there's 4 in total. So what I'm going to do right here is just log those out to the console. First of all, I'm going to say console.log and then the request object every time there's a state change, and then I'm going to log out request.ready state, and that gets us the state that the current request is in. So if I save this, what's going to happen is we're going to set up the request, then we're going to send it, and every time there's some kind of ready state change, then it's going to log these to the console. So let me save that and come over here and come to the console, and you can see there's 4 in total, like I said. So each time around we get the request object, which has all of these different things on it, and up here we can see we also have the states 1, 2, 3 and 4. But what do these actually mean? Well, to find out, we're going to head on over to the MDN guide, the Mozilla website, and we can see down here these different ready states. So we have 0, which means it's not yet been sent, and open has not been called. Remember, we use open right here. Then we get ready state 1 when we've actually called open. So after this point right here, we're going to get ready state 1. Then after we use the send method, we're going to get ready state 2, which is this point. Then ready state 3 is when we're downloading and we've got some kind of response text. And then 4 is when the operation is fully complete and we've got access now to the response. So this right here, this number 4, this is the most crucial step, because at this point, this is when we want to take that data and do something with it. We can receive it and do something. So if we head back to these different things right here, if we open up this object and come down here, we can see this response text. And this response text contains the actual data that we receive. So over here, what I'm going to do is listen inside this event listener for the ready state changes. And if the ready state is equal to 4, that's the point when we can do something with the response text. So what I'm going to do is comment this thing out first of all, and then I'm going to do a little if check. And inside here, I'll say if request dot ready state is triple equals to 4, then we're going to do something. This is when we can do something with the response, the data. Not in 0, 1, 2, or 3. We can't do it at those stages because it's not ready yet. But we can do it at this stage, so we only want to do something at stage 4. And that's why we're doing this if check, because then whatever we do with it, we can do that here. So for now, all I'm going to do is console.log and say request.response text. That's the property which contains the response data. So if I save this now, then come to the browser, we're going to see all of this data returned to us. So we have all that now. That's really nice, and it looks like a gigantic array of JavaScript objects. But this is actually JSON data. It's all really a giant string called JSON. And we'll look at how we can deal with this data later on. But for now, just know this is the data that we're getting back. So now we're sending the request, and we're reacting when it's complete, and we get a response, and we can see that data in the console. So we're 2/3 of the way there, but this isn't complete yet. To complete it fully, I want to talk about response statuses, and we'll talk about that in the next video.